those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on our God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on our God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on our God. We will go from strength to strength until we see you face to face. Hear our prayer, O Lord God Almighty. Come bless our land as we seek you, worship you. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on our God. We will go from strength to strength until we see you face to face. Hear our prayer, O Lord God Almighty. Come bless our land as we seek you, worship you. Hear our prayer, O Lord God Almighty. Come bless our land as we seek you, worship you. For you are holy, for you are holy, for you are holy, Lord. For you are holy, for you are holy, for you are holy, Lord. For you are holy, for you are holy, for you are holy.
few years ago, I don't know if you've noticed it, but usually at the back of jeepneys or buses, taxis, or maybe even delivery trucks, there's usually that statement that says, may reklamo ka? I don't know if you've noticed that. At the back of cars. I don't usually see that anymore today. But years before, there's that statement, may reklamo ka? And then there's a cell phone number. Perhaps the cell phone number of the jeepney operator, or maybe the taxi operator, or maybe the owner of the delivery truck, the company for which the delivery truck is delivering goods. And the purpose of that is if other commuters or other motorists see that something is wrong with the vehicle, or the driver is not doing well, or maybe being rude on the streets, they can call the number. And then they would say, this vehicle with plate number, this and that. This is what the driver did. Or maybe he had an accident, or if he wanted to report to the owner of the vehicle. Now, that statement that says, may reklamo ka, or do you have any complaints, somehow gives us the idea that, hey, if I can complain about, if I wanted to complain about something, I can call that number. Now, for us as Christians, many times when we hear the word complaints, our impression would be, oh, this is something negative, right? We are not supposed to complain. Complaints is neither good nor bad, actually. Sometimes there are instances wherein complaints can be good. Like, for example, if we see something, or if we see someone, let's say for example in school or at work, doing something that is bad, and then we talk about it, we address that, and then we bring that to those who are in authority, so that that thing can be corrected. Is that a good complaint? Is complaint a good thing or a bad thing? In that particular case, that particular complaint is a good thing. Why? Because we address a problem. We correct a problem so that the problem will not recur, right? Of course, the fact that there are some complaints that are good implies that there are also complaints that are not good. Would you agree? Some complaints are legitimate, some complaints are necessary in order for us to correct something, because all of us can have blind spots, right? We are not able to see everything. That sometimes we need another person to tell us, hey, something is wrong in this particular area. We need people to complain to us so that we would be able to see, oh yeah, he's right. We need to correct this particular thing, and so that we can address the problem. That is why I said sometimes complaints can be good, but it is how we complain and what do we complain about that makes the complaint not good. Would you agree? Sometimes the reasons why we are complaining and the method by which we complain makes it not good. And this is the example that we see in these two chapters, in Numbers chapter 11 to 12. We see examples of complaints that are not good, right? And that's what I would like to address today. Right? Now, our passage in Numbers chapters 11 and 12 is a long one, so I don't think we would have enough time to read those two chapters today. So I would like to encourage you, maybe after the service, when you go home this afternoon, read the story again, those two chapters of the book of Numbers, and so that you will be reminded of the things that we discussed today. But what I would like to point out is that in these two chapters, we see at least 4 reasons why people complain. There is a series of stories in these two chapters in the book of Numbers, but totally different stories. But one thing that that binds these 4 stories together is that there is one common theme in these 4 stories, and that is the theme of complaining. And it shows us that there are various reasons why people complain. and what could be the possible solution for this type of complaint. Now, reason number one, we read in chapter 11, verse 1, that one reason why people complain is because of the adversity or the difficulty that they encounter. Look at chapter 11, verse 1 of Numbers. It says, "Now the people became like those who complain of the adversity in the hearing of the Lord. And when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp." Keep in mind that prior to this incident, the Lord gave them several commands. And one of the thing that we normally read about the Israelites, at least in the first 10 chapters in the book of Numbers, is that they are easy to obey what the Lord commanded them to do. We are always told that they did what the Lord commanded them to do. For example, Numbers chapter 1, verse 54. It says, "Thus the sons of Israel did, according to all which the Lord had commanded Moses, so they did." Likewise in chapter 2, verse 34. "Thus the sons of Israel did, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they set out, everyone by his family according to the father's household." And then in chapter 8, we read the same thing. "Thus did Moses and Aaron and all the congregations of the sons of Israel, and sons of Israel to the Levites, according to all the Lord had commanded Moses concerning the Levites. So the sons of Israel did to them." And then finally, chapter 9, verse 5. "They observed the Passover in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all the Lord had commanded Moses, so the sons of Israel did." In other words, what we read in the first 10 chapters of the book of Numbers is that this is a nation who obeys the Lord. Whatever the Lord tells them, they did according to what the Lord was telling them. Whatever the Lord said that they should do, they did. They did according to all the commands of the Lord. Now the question is, what happened? In chapter 11, verse 1, we see a different people. In the first 10 chapters, here is a people who obeys the Lord, and then at the beginning of chapter 11, all of a sudden, they refuse to obey the Lord already. What happened to them? Now, it is not clear in the story what caused that change. The only thing that we are told is that they faced adversity, and then they began to complain. They get to that point that somehow they feel that it is already difficult for them, and that they begin to complain. Some perhaps would say that it only shows that maybe the first 10 chapters, their obedience was somewhat superficial. That could be the case, but maybe not. Perhaps they were just tired of a seemingly endless journey. That could be a possibility also. And perhaps just like many of us, sometimes we encounter some kind of a emotional roller coaster. Sometimes we are emotionally, we feel good. And sometimes because of, for whatever reason, maybe we encounter difficulty, we are emotionally low, and then we begin to complain to the Lord. But here, notice the way the author of Numbers described them. It's really worth noting. He said, they became like those who complain of adversity. It seems that what he was really saying is that they should not really be complaining this way, but they complain as if something horrible or horribly evil is happening to them, but they should be thankful instead. They are complaining as someone who was going through adversity. But the author was saying, no, it is as if they encountered so much difficulty, but the truth is they should not be complaining. Right? Now, keep in mind that at this point, even we are not only told that the Israelites obeyed the Lord, we are also told that the Israelites already received the promises from God. The Lord had already given them the promise that they would enter the land. Remember in Exodus chapter 34, verses 10 to 11, this is what the Lord said to them. Then God said, "Behold, I am going to make a covenant, before all the people, I will perform miracles which have not been produced in all the earth, nor among any of the nations. And all the people among whom you live will see the working of the Lord. For it is a fearful thing that I am going to perform with you. Be sure to observe what I am commanding you this day. Behold, I am going to drive out the Amorites before you, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. As early as Exodus chapter 34, the Lord had already promised to give them the land. They are on their way to enter the land. But somehow, somewhere along the way, they forgot why they are there for. Why they are on a journey. It seems that they have forgotten the reason why they are on the journey. They already have the promise of God. In fact, in Numbers chapter 2, the Lord was already preparing them for battle. And this is the battle that they have to fight so that they can take possession of the land that was promised to them. But instead of rejoicing over the fact that they have already been delivered from slavery and that they are already on their way to enter the land that was promised to them, they began to complain. They began to complain as if they have encountered a horrible adversity. Instead of being thankful and persevering, they complained as if they were experiencing some kind of evil from the Lord. There was a story about a boy who was asked by his mother to buy medicine for her. But they were living in a place where the nearest drugstore was about 3 kilometers away from their house. So what the mother did was she gave the boy instead of just the money for the medicine, she gave the boy additional allowance so that he can buy maybe soft drinks or snacks along the way, because he had to walk a long road. So initially the boy was complaining, but when the mother gave him additional for the snacks, somehow he was happy and he stopped complaining, and so he complied and he started walking to the drugstore. But on his way, he saw a fishbowl vendor, and so he stopped, and he was about to buy some fishbowl. But the problem is, the fishbowl vendor was just starting to heat his stove, and so there was no available fishbowl yet at that time. So he could not buy fishbowl, the thing that he would like to eat. And so again, he was complaining and said, "Wow, why would it take so long? Why do I have to wait this long just to be able to get some fishbowl?" And so he waited, and when he got his fishbowl, he was very happy. Now, while he was walking, again he met a friend, a classmate from school, and then they began to play. He forgot what time is it already, but he forgot that on his way to the drugstore, he would have to pass a bridge that closes at a certain time. So he was he was enjoying his time with his friend that he forgot that he was supposed to be at the bridge at a certain time, or else it would be closed already. So by the time that he realized that it's already near the time that the bridge was closing, that was the time he said to his friend, "No, I have to go." But he did not. He was not able to be there on time. So the bridge closed, and so they had to wait another 3 hours before the bridge opened. And so what did the boy do? What do you think? He started complaining again, right? He started complaining for 3 hours until the bridge opened, and so he was able to go there to go to the drugstore to buy. And on his way back, it began to rain, and so the road was muddy. And what do you think the boy did again? He started complaining once again. On his way back, what he did was to complain. Now, what do you think was the problem? What do you think was the problem? Would you say that the reason why the boy was complaining, that the boy was somehow encountering some difficulties, is that he forgot why he went out? Or what is the reason why he went out, right? He went out to buy medicine, but instead he was distracted by the fishbowl vendor. He went out to buy, supposedly to buy medicine, but he was distracted by the playmate that he met on the street, right? That he forgot that he had to go through the bridge at a certain time, right? Now, sometimes we encounter difficulties in life. Why? Because we forget our goal, we forget our purpose. And as a result of that, we encounter difficulties. And sometimes when we encounter difficulties, we begin to complain, right? And I think this is also what happened to the Israelites at that time. The Lord already told them, I'm going to bring you into the land, but you will face some difficulties along the way. It seems that they forgot about that. The Lord gave them the promise and said, I'm going to bring you to the land, but you will encounter this kind of difficulty along the way. And it seems that they forgot what the Lord promised to them and what the Lord warned them about. And so, because they forgot what the Lord told them, they began complaining. Now, I don't know about you, but maybe I encountered that kind of experience sometimes. That sometimes I forget what I'm supposed to do. And when I encounter difficulty, I begin to complain about it, right? And it seems that if that is the reason for our complaint, maybe it's time for us to pause and sit down and think, what is the reason why I'm encountering difficulties? And so what would be the solution for that? To remind ourselves of our goal, to remind ourselves of our purpose, and to continue our journey towards that goal. God did not promise us that everything will go smoothly all the way. He didn't make that promise to us. There will be times we will encounter difficulties, but the question is, do we still remember our goal, our purpose in life? Are we still going to the right direction, right? Are we still doing the things that the Lord has set out for us? Maybe if we calm ourselves down and remind ourselves, what are we doing and why are we here and what direction we should take, maybe that could help us to once again get oriented towards the right path, right? So that is the first reason why people complain. Sometimes we forget our purpose, and the solution is to refocus our attention to the goal. Secondly, there is a second reason why the Israelites complain, and perhaps you may find this a bit trivial. They were complaining about food. They were complaining about food. Look at chapter 11, verse 4. It says there, the rabble who were among them had greedy desires, and also the sons of Israel wept again and said, who will give us meat to eat? That is in chapter 11, verse 4. What were they complaining about? They were complaining about food. They were complaining about food. Now, take note that initially the people were complaining, initially the people were complaining, right? And it seems that if we just read chapter 11, verse 1, we can get the impression that every single one of them, every single Israelite was complaining at that time. But here in chapter 11, verse 4, somehow the author singled out one particular group that was really complaining about something. He said, the rabble who were among them had greedy desires. He did not say, well, every single one of them was complaining. No. There were a few who were complaining, and what happened afterwards? These few who were complaining were able to influence the rest, because there were a few who were complaining. Somehow, even the rest began to follow. followed them and began to complain as well. Right? See, one of the things that we can see here is that a complaining spirit can be contagious. Right? Try talking with a person who has nothing to say but complains. Well, what do you notice about after talking with that person for maybe 3 or 4 times? I don't know, maybe you would notice that we began to feel that we wanted to follow them already, right? Would you agree? If we talk with people who would say nothing but complaints, somehow it's easy for us to acquire that attitude also, right? Why? Because complaints can be contagious. Now, remember what I said earlier. The act of complaining in itself is neither good nor bad. There are times when complaints are necessary because we want those people who need to take action, we want them to take action so that a wrong can be corrected, right? That sometimes complaints are necessary. But there are times when complaints are unnecessary. And when we encounter this kinds of situation, sometimes even this complaining spirit or complaining attitude, that can be contagious also. That we begin to complain even for things that are unnecessary for us to complain about. But here what we see is that the people were complaining. Why? Because they missed certain food. In Egypt, while they were slaves, they were able to enjoy certain food. But now they're in the desert. What happened to them? There was not much food for them to eat. All they had was manna, right? And here's the interesting thing. Manna in Hebrew means what? What? W-H-A-T. What? And that's the reason why they call that food manna. Why? Because when the Israelites saw that the Lord provided manna for them, in the book of Numbers, what did the people said when they saw that, you know, that food that the Lord provided to them? They don't know what it is called, and so that what they said, what is that? And so that is why they began to call it what is that? That's why they call it manna, because that is what manna means in Hebrew. Manna means what? Because they don't know what it is, and so somehow they began to call that food what or manna. But the thing is, what or the question what can be asked in several different ways. When we ask what, we can ask, what is that? It's just a question out of curiosity. What is that? We can ask the question what in another way. What? And when we ask that question what that way, what do we imply? It's a question of surprise or somehow, what do you mean? And somehow there is a little bit of complaint in that. And then when we ask the question, what would that imply? It would imply another type of attitude, right? And so somehow when the Israelites asked what, it seems that at the beginning they were just curious about that. What is that thing? I'm curious. I do not know what that is. But as they move along, as they continue to progress, as they continue their journey, it seems that the question that they were asking is not, what is it? I'm curious what it is. It began to change. They were beginning to ask, what? That is what we're going to eat again today. Manna in the morning, manna at noon, and manna in the evening. Can't we have meat or onions or leeks or other food and other things to eat, they began to complain about food. Why? Because that is what they have been eating all the time. Interestingly, the Lord responded by providing other types of food for them, by giving them quail. But if you notice the way that the Lord answered them, we can see that the Lord was not pleased with them anymore. If you look at chapter 11, verse 18, it says, "Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt?" Right? You know, it is normal for us to have some cravings, right? I'm sure you have experienced craving for a certain type of food, and maybe you have not eaten that particular food for a long time, and you wanted to eat that, and so somehow you would think about it, and you would go and where that food can be bought, and then to be able to taste it once again. You know, before we have been to another country for my studies for more than 5 years, and one of the things that I missed, you know what? Jian Pao, because there's no Jian Pao in the place where we live. So when we came home back in 2013, we lived in Valenzuela. You know what I did? From I took a jeepney from Valenzuela and went to Ongpin just to be able to buy Jian Pao. But the thing is, there are 3 of us in the family. My wife is not a Jian Pao fan. She eats Jian Pao, but you know, she doesn't really like it. My son eats Jian Pao, but she doesn't really like it. But for some reason, when we just came back, I was craving for it. And so I went to Ongpin just to be able to buy Ongpin and Jian Pao, because that is something that I was, you know, for 5.5 years, I was not able to taste. And so as soon as we came back, that is what I bought for the family. But I think I bought too much. So after I ate the first, satisfying. It's been a long time since I've tasted that. I ate the second one. Delicious. It's been a long time that I've tasted that. The third one, I'm beginning to feel that I cannot eat anymore. And then I ate a fourth one. And I said, why did I go to Ongpin just to buy this? You know, you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes we crave for something. And when we began to eat it, and then we are satisfied, we get to a point that we say, well, what's the point of trying to satisfy this craving? I'm not saying that satisfying cravings is a bad thing. But sometimes it can be out of, you know, as the scriptures say, it can be out of greed. In that particular case, it's been years since I've tasted this. I want some more. I want some more. But eventually, I realized that no, one is enough. Maybe two is enough. But to eat more than I need, it's just like what the Lord is saying, that it will come out of your nostrils when you eat too much of it. Why? Because it is something that is, should we say, done out of greed, right? People complain. In their particular case, they complain because of food. But the primary reason why they were complaining was because of greed, right? The food is just something that we see on the surface, right? But chapter 11, verse 4 said, there were rebels among them who had what? Who had greedy desires, right? And because of that, the Lord was not happy with them. And that is why when the Lord responded to them, He said they would be eating meat, not just 1 day or 5 days or 10 days, but they would eat it for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils in verse 20 and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and wept before Him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? At that time, they forgot what the Lord had done for them. The Lord saved them from slavery. The Lord brought them out of Egypt in order to free them, in order to give a good promise to them. And they forgot about that. Just like the first reason, they forgot why the Lord, why they were on their journey. And this time, they have, as the Lord said, they have rejected the Lord, right? And that is the reason why they were complaining. So if for the first reason we complain because we forgot our goal, what would be the solution for that? Remind ourselves of our goal in life. If the reason why we were complaining is because we have rejected God's plan for us, what would be the solution for that? Accept the Lord's plan for us, right? There is a third reason why people complain, and that is when we encounter difficulty in our work or in our service. As we have mentioned earlier, a complaining attitude can be contagious. First, the rebels, as chapter 11 verse 4 saying, they were complaining. And then secondly, as the story progresses, we see that not only them, but other people were complaining also. And then even Moses himself began to complain, right? Again, remember what we said earlier, that complaints are neither good nor bad. Sometimes it can be good because it prompts certain people to take actions. Well, why? Because complaint sometimes can have an implied command. Let's do something about this. Let us correct this so that we can find a solution for this. Now, as we have also said earlier, complaints can be contagious. And here we see that even Moses was beginning to complain already. Look at chapter 11, verse 11. Moses said to the Lord, why have you been so hard on your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight? And you have that you have laid the burden on all these people on me. Was it I who conceived all these people? Was it I who brought them forth? And you should say to me, carry them on your bosom as a nurse carries a nursing infant. So the land, to the land which you swore to their fathers. Where am I to get meat to give to all these people? For they weep before me. Give us meat that we may eat. And I alone am not able to carry all these people because it is too burdensome for me. So if you are going to deal thus with me, please kill me at once if I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my wretchedness. Look at what Moses said to the Lord. He was already complaining to the Lord. I did not conceive these people. Why do you have to put the burden on me for these people? Right? And Moses got to the point when he said to the Lord, I would rather die than see my wretchedness. See? That is something that Moses, the man of God, began to say to the Lord. Right? What do you think was Moses feeling at that time? He was very tired, right? He was tired that people were complaining to him, and perhaps he was tired that apparently, at least at that time, it seems that the Lord was doing nothing to help him. That is why he was beginning to complain to the Lord. Lord, why do you have to assign me for this task? Why do I have to do all these things? And then the people were complaining to me, and I'm asking you for help, and you would not help me with their complaints. What am I going to do? And he began to complain before the Lord. Right? Remember what the Lord said to Moses at that time. That was the time when the Lord reminded Moses that he did not have to carry the burden alone. Somehow he's able to share some of his burdens to other people, assign other people to help him with his task. You know, sometimes our work can be too burdensome for us to be able to do them alone, right? We hear people complain, sometimes not because they want to complain, but because they were simply tired, right? And maybe sometimes it is us, right? We are overwhelmed with the things that we are doing. We are overwhelmed with the amount of work that we need to finish. But here one of the lessons that we learn is that if we are complaining because of the amount of work that we are doing, perhaps one of the things that we can do is that we should be able to share the burden with other people. There may be some things that we can ask for help from other people. And I think the most important thing is we need to ask the Lord to help us to get our focus on the right thing and somehow to see things from the right perspective also, just as the Lord did to Moses. People complain because of adversity. People complain because of greed. Sometimes people complain because they are overwhelmed with the things that they are doing. Finally, there's a fourth reason why people complain. And sometimes people complain because of jealousy or envy. Look at chapter 12, verse 1. It says there, "Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, 'Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?' And the Lord heard it." Interestingly, in verse 1, they were complaining about the wife of Moses, right? That is the thing that they verbalized. That's the thing that they said. We are complaining because of the wife of Moses. But in verse 2, it made clear in verse 2 that it seems that their complaint about the wife of Moses is simply a front of their complaints. The reason why they were complaining about Moses is what? It says, "Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" Those words gives us some hint of jealousy on the part of Miriam and Aaron. That somehow they begin to see that how come Moses was given a special place or a special authority from the Lord. You see, pride, envy, fault finding, these are three things that are interconnected to each other. When in our pride we begin to think that we are more deserving than other people, what do? We begin to find fault. We begin to look for the fault of others, right? In order to prove that, hey, that person is not really worthy of the honor that he's receiving. Miriam and Aaron were not the only people who complained about to the Lord or about Moses, right? We see Korah, Dathan, and Abiram also complaining about Moses. But here's the interesting thing. Immediately after Aaron and Miriam complained about Moses, here's what Numbers chapter 12 verse 3 says. "Now the man Moses was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth." Moses could have assumed his authority and said, no. This is the authority that the Lord gave me, and therefore I'm going to exercise my authority over the people under him. But Moses didn't do that. He allowed the Lord to work. He allowed the Lord to somehow fight the battles for him, right? Here is the fourth reason why people complain. Sometimes we complain because of jealousy. Sometimes we complain about envy, right? There was a story about, actually a fable. Have you heard of the fable of Juno and the peacock? Well, one of the children's stories from before. Juno, a goddess, who in that story, she has the power to grant wishes to the animals. One time, a peacock was complaining because even though his feathers were beautiful, but his voice was not. And so he complained to Juno, and he said to her, I want the voice of the nightingale. I want you to give me the voice of a nightingale, so that I can sing like the nightingale. And so Juno said, no, I'm not going to grant that to you. Remember that I have already given you feathers that are beautiful. The nightingale does not have the beautiful feathers like yours. So she has the feathers, you have the feathers, she has the voice, right? But the peacock continued to complain and said, no, that's not fair. I want her voice also. Give me that voice. And then this is what Juno said. She said, every creature has different gifts. To the eagle, strength. To the nightingale, voice. And to the peacock, a beautiful feather. If I grant you your request today, after you receive a beautiful voice, it will not take long when you will find another reason for complaining. That's what, of course, this is not a true story, but I think we can learn a good lesson from that. Perhaps one of the reasons why the Lord sometimes do not hear our prayers is that He wants to teach us to be content, right? The solution for discontentment is what? To be content. Now, I'm not saying that we should not ask from the Lord. The Lord wants us to ask from Him, right? He's our Heavenly Father. He wants to hear our request, and He's willing to grant our request, right? But the question is, do we do it out of this attitude of discontentment, or are we doing it still maintaining that attitude of contentment? Jealousy, pride, envy, all of those things can be linked to discontentment, right? And the solution for discontentment is not getting more things. The solution for discontentment is what? To learn how to be content, right? Numbers chapter 11 to 12 gives us 4 stories. 4 different stories, but there is one common thread among those 4 stories. And that is about complaining. Numbers 11 to 12 shows us 4 reasons why people complain. Some complain because of adversity. Why were they complaining because of adversity? Because they lost sight of God's promise to them. If that happens to us, what would be the solution for that? Remind ourselves of God's promises to us. Some people complain because of food, right? Because of discontentment. The solution for that is learn how to be content, right? Some complain because they are overworked, maybe because they are burned out, right? Because they are overwhelmed with the things that they are doing. If that is the reason why we are complaining, maybe it's time for us to learn how to rest. Maybe it's time for us to learn how to trust people by by sharing our burdens, our load to them. That can help us to lessen our complaining. Some complain because of pride, because of envy. And the solution for that is to continuously learn, to strive, to learn humility, and somehow pursue that particular quality, because that is what the Lord wants us to learn. For every problem, there is a solution. There are different reasons for discontentment, and I think there are solutions for those problems also. Why don't we pray? Father, thank you for the lessons that we have learned from Numbers 11 to 12. And help us, Lord God, that if there are things in our lives, if we may be, we may have that complaining attitude. If our reasons are not legitimate, Lord, help us to realize them and reveal them to us. And help us to be thankful, help us to be content, help us to be humble, and help us to share our burdens with other people. And more importantly, help us to be like you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.